Welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell. I'm your host. And today our guest is Jon Turk. Jon is based out of Fernie, also spends some time in Montana. Great to have you as a guest on Talking Kootenay Books, Jon.
It's great to be here, Keith. I'm looking forward to the talk.
Yeah. The reason that we're here is we really want to discuss your new book and then maybe explore some of the other books that you've published over the years. I know you're a pretty prolific writer and you've written a fair bit of material over the years. But let's talk about the latest book. It came out in the fall, Tracking Lions, Myths, and Wilderness in Samburu. So tell me, where's Samburu?
It's in northeastern Kenya in the Horn of Africa and near the Olduvai Gorge where humanity evolved.
Okay, so right in the heart of Africa.
Yeah.
And you journeyed over there. Tell us about the adventure that led to the book.
Well, I was invited to go over and help on a lion conservation, tracking and conservation project. And that led me to reflections about the origin of humanity because we were there. Mm-hmm. And it led me to thinking when I got back about what gave us humans the power to survive. And then what happened was it's mythology, storytelling, getting together, being a community, a tribe that gave us the power to survive. And then while I was there, I kind of lived through 70,000 years of human history because I saw the power of being able to track a lion unarmed in the savannah. And then this big switcheroo happened, and the tribalism that gave us the power to face the lion got turned against us, and in the end there were people out there who wanted to cut off my head and post it up on Facebook. So that created the adventure narrative of the book.
I was impressed, Jon, that you were right there. It was exciting as things developed, and I was hoping that you would survive by the end of the book.
I was hoping that I would survive also.
But you know, the thing that really impressed me was the people that you did meet and that they were willing to help and sort of led you on this adventure. And you were able to learn a great deal from that experience.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could take, the book is very philosophical and anthropological and looking at the origins and strength of human beings, but I'm a storyteller. It's a book about storytelling. Storytelling is about character. Mm-hmm. And I was there, and these were wonderful, beautiful people, and we were traveling in the savannah together. There was danger, there was glory, there was weddings. And in the book and my writing, I tried to bring that personal characterization to the book.
Well, it seemed like you struck a real personal connection with many of the characters that appear in your book, and you were able to sort of delve into their life and get an understanding of what they sort of deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, well, thank you. Anytime you're traveling in the wilderness with somebody, whether it's on a ski tour in the backcountry of Fernie or in the savannah in Samburu, there's a bond there, a shared bond of that wilderness experience, and that comes out, and I tried to make that alive.
Right. So what were some of the features of the tracking of the lion? What did that all involve?
Well, we start off, a lion ate a cow in one of the villages, and we were supposed to track it. And then it never got clear to me. I'm half deaf. I don't understand English that well, and certainly don't speak Samburu. It wasn't clear to me what was going to happen when we found the lion. Like we were supposed to somehow convince the lion. Somehow we were supposed to engage this lion and let the lion know that we were aware of it, and somehow convince the lion that it was being a bad lion and it should eat zebras and not cows. Have you ever tried to train a house cat not to kill sparrows? But anyway, we were out there tracking the lion, and before I took off, one of the young warriors, one of the young men in the village, he said, "You need to be armed because things could go south on you and the lion could come out of the bushes." So he handed me this club. And I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah. And then I'm walking along through the savannah and it dawns on me, this is all I got. Mm-hmm. And my first reaction is, I'm angry. Like, what is this ragtag operation? Why do they not allow me to defend myself? Mm. And then two things happen. It's the same anytime you're in the wilderness, whether you're skiing an avalanche slope or you're in a lion territory with a rungu. This is called a rungu. Okay. And anger isn't going to be your friend. Right. At all. So you have to collect and you have to focus. And I realized that really what I had to do was to be at one with this savannah and at one with the lion in order to stay alive. And that's really what started the mental process of the book, because I said, how actually did our ancestors survive on this savannah with this as their weaponry? And when I got back home, back to North America after the trip, and I started looking into it, I found that actually human beings were not doing a very good job of surviving. They were becoming extinct. There were only 2,000 Homo sapiens left on the planet, and population declining. We were almost extinct. And then the population increased. So what caused the population increase? And it was not the invention of sophisticated tools and weaponry. That came later. And if there's any one point I'd like people to take from that book, from the book, is that it wasn't sophisticated tools and weaponry that led to our survival. It was storytelling, myth. And you ask, well, in a Darwinian survival situation, how does storytelling and myth, which is kind of a waste of time, you know, you're sitting around the fire, you're not gathering
It wouldn't have been the first thing I thought of, but tell us why it's so important.
Well, now we're into speculation at some point, but it is important because we did survive, but it gave us unity. And it gave us something that it's a slippery devil of a word called power. And the power to be together, to exchange ideas, to invent realities that that are not exactly in front of you. So I'll give you one example. I mean, there's many examples. One example is tracking. Okay. When you're tracking an animal, you want to know as much information about that animal as possible. Is it tired? Is it big? Is it little? Is it running? Is it feeding? Is it hungry? And all of those pieces of information help you to survive. So you're telling yourself a story based on symbols, the track in the ground. You don't see the antelope, you see the symbols. Mm-hmm. And then people started making symbols and making more complex stories out of the symbols, but somehow through that storytelling, we not only bonded together, but we were able to understand our environment well enough to survive.
And that's really the essence of your book, is that you discovered that as you went on this adventure.
Right. And then the turnaround came because storytelling is also the most terrible thing that happens in society, because instead of this storyteller around the campfire with everybody joining together and becoming one, you get one person that stands aside and tells us a crazy story and then tells us we have to go to war and kill other people. because of that story.
So
and I'm
a
not
bit of a
making this
paradox.
up. This happens, man.
Yeah, so a bit of a paradox there. So you saw that sort of playing out right in front of you. I was impressed when I read the book that you sort of captured the culture of what was going on. And the people, in my mind, seemed to be primitive or poor, but in many ways they were rich in their knowledge and their culture and so forth. So how does, like at one point they're tracking a lion, and in the next minute, you know, they're picking up their cell phone and calling across the world. So there was always that sort of new and old, you know, intertwined or meeting.
Yeah, and there's no mystery about that. I've traveled in lots of different cultures, and people grasp onto the technology that helps them survive. And whether it's learning what wood makes the best ragu, or learning that a cell phone is a handy thing. I think one of the stories said, the cell phone is also a spoon. Did you know that?
Okay.
So we were out and we had some food, and all the warriors took the backs off their cell phone and used that as a spoon. Tools are tools.
You do what works, right?
You do what works.
You know, one thing that, again, stood out in my mind is you had a number of accounts about elephants and within the book, and I have a fascination with elephants, and I have to ask you that there was at one point in the book, you know, I think you were walking or hiking, and you discovered evidence of an elephant near the top or the summit of a high mountain, and to me that seemed to be really an unusual thing. Was that really happening?
Well, it was really happening. It was unusual to me too. I have a foundation as a rock climber. I've been a technical climber and big walls and stuff like that. So we were hiking now, not climbing up this mountain, and we came to this rock slab, and it wasn't something you'd rope up for, but it was something that made me think and pay attention and watch my footing. And I get to the top of it and I see some elephant poop. And I was with this guy, Jawas, and I said, Jawas, is that elephant poop? And he looks at me like, well, that was a dumb question. Of course it's elephant poop. And I said, how do the elephants get up here? I didn't think of elephants as climbing rock slabs. Mm-hmm. And he says they crawl up on their hands and knees, and they do it when there's poachers around and they have to get away. And there's some meadows up there that have good grass. Mm-hmm. And when they have to get away, they rock climb up on their hands and knees and hide out in these alpine meadows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fascinating and really interesting to see. And I'm sure you saw many evidences of you know, spectacular things as you made your adventure through some burrow. I just wanted to ask you, Jon, this is one of the books that you've written. Just tell us about a couple of your other adventure books that you've put together.
Yeah, I have a number of adventure books. Starts with Cold Oceans, and then I did a sequence. I did a 2-year kayak crossing of the North Pacific from Japan to Alaska along the Kamchatka coast, following an ancient, very old, 10, 20, 30,000-year-old migration route. And that was called In the Wake of the Jomon. And during that journey, I met an old shaman woman, 96-year-old shaman named Mulanat, born during the reign of Tsar Nicholas II. Mm. And she told me, we just visited for a couple days. We were caught in a storm in this village, and she said, come back, it will be good if you do. And I thought, this is something I really have to do. This will change my life. I had this intuition, and I came back and spent off and on 5 years in the village. Mm. And that was written about those years. I went through a healing. I went on this long journey to talk with Kootenay the raven, the spirit raven, and through psychedelic mushroom journeys and physical journeys on the tundra. And that is all encapsulated in The Raven's Gift. And then so on and so forth. The next book was Crocodiles and Ice, centered around a real memoir-driven thing about the question after you've spent all this time in the wilderness, and it relates to the lion and the club, is really what is power, and how do you find it? How do you reach your own power? And that's what I addressed in Crocodiles and Ice.
So a life full of adventure, Jon. What motivates you to travel these, somewhat torturous circuits seeking adventure? What is the motivation?
My DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people are motivated to play the guitar. I'm not an oboe player. If I was an oboe player, I'd write a book, Zen and the Art of Oboe Playing. But ever since I was a tiny kid, I've always wanted to be outside and in wild places. And to this day, and they've driven me. There's no simple answer. It's just in me.
Okay. So I'm just wondering about when you actually sit down and write. Have you kept copious notes about your adventures? How do you recall all the things that you encountered? What's your writing process, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah. I keep a journal. Mm-hmm. I did a writing course where the instructor told me to have a journal around all day and be writing all day. But to me, that produces a barrier between me and the person I'm with. So if I'm off tracking a camel or tracking a lion with you and I'm writing all the time, then I'm a journalist. I'm asking questions. I'm not your friend. Mm. And so I don't do that. Mm. And when I get back in the evening at the end of the day, I write it. And if I forget something, well, if it was so unimportant that I forgot it 2 hours later, we can let it go. I also have a point and shoot camera. Okay. So I'll generally carry 2 cameras, a good camera, a high-end camera, and also a little point and shoot. And I'll snap a lot of pictures with no fussing around with the exposure or anything. Mm-hmm. And when I'm describing a scene, I'll just pull that up on one screen on my computer, so I'll have the scene. And then rather than having taken notes, I've just pulled out the camera and go boom, 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 and put it back in. And then I can describe the scene.
So you're sort of catching the essence of where you are and at that particular time, so you're able to sort of use that as a reference?
Right. Yeah. And the other thing, Keith, is I have a long history as a science writer. Yeah. And I want my books to be more than a Jon Turk's Wonderful Adventure. He went there and did that. So every one of my books has a theme, right, an idea, a philosophy that I want to present. And so along with the adventure becomes the skeleton, the narrative, to carry the theme, carry the philosophy, and make it alive. So I spent a lot of time doing old-fashioned internet or book or journal research.
Right. So Jon, you split your time between Fernie, which is your home base, and Montana. And why do you spend sort of equal time in each area?
Well, there is no grand plan, Dan. I didn't think this up and write it down ahead of time. I found a really beautiful place in Montana, which has become my home. Yeah. But the skiing was lousy, and I'm a skier, and so I came to Fernie. So I ended up spending winters, this is like 30 years or something, spending winters in Fernie. But we have a house, a condo in town in Fernie, and I live in the woods in the summer, so it's back and forth. There's no plan.
Best of both worlds, it sounds like.
Best of both worlds.
So, Montana has a pretty rich history or legacy outdoor writers. And there's a lot of famous writers that have come out of Montana. I'm thinking of Tim Cahill as one of them. Do you find inspiration from the fact that you are in the wilderness, either in Montana or in BC, that really sort of spurs on your activity and your adventures and your writing?
I think my inspiration is more directly with the wilderness, not with the other writers who are also inspired by the wilderness. Mm-hmm. So it's a direct getting the strength, that word I used before, power, from the wilderness.
Mm-hmm. So it's a real inspiration to you.
Yeah, I couldn't live on the 17th floor in a tenement apartment in Toronto and write books. I'd just go crazy.
Mm-hmm. Jon, let's explore the publishing of your book, put out by Rocky Mountain Books, is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how was that experience? How did that all go together?
Well, that's been a great experience. They've been a great company to work for. Most publishing companies, or many, will publish books from a wide variety of topics and philosophies and slants. RMB, Rocky Mountain Books, publishes only environmental books and guidebooks and books about the outdoors. One of their logo things is Think Outside. Mm-hmm. And so to be working with a company that only does outdoor books has been a great experience.
Well, good. Well, the book it physically presents itself very well, and I was impressed the fact that you were able to capture some of your images in color within the book, and that, in my mind, always adds to sort of the whole context of the book, and it helps the reader visualize where you're talking about and where you visited. Did that just happen by chance, or was that sort of all planned out right from the start?
No, that was a surprise. Don Gorman, the editor, just made that decision. And every book I've ever written, I've begged and pleaded for pictures, and they said it's too expensive. And then Don sends me an email. He says, "Send me a bunch of images. We're going to run a couple of images." And then the book, the proofs and everything come out, and there was, I forget, a lot of pages of images. I was like, "Yay! Thank you."
Yeah. No, I think it really does add to the book, and
thanks, Keith.
It lets you really relate to the experience that you encountered, and I think it also sort of captures the culture that you encountered and experienced as well, because it visually tells that story as well.
Yeah, well, thank you. And as we've said several times, the culture of the Samburu people is a big part of the book.
Yeah. So, Jon, how did you go from scientific writing, and I'll use the term textbook writing, to adventure writing and the books that you've been doing lately? How did that transition happen?
Also, no grand plan.
Okay.
I went to university, went to graduate school, got a PhD in organic chemistry. I was working in very theoretical work. And one day I woke up and I went, "Man, this isn't me at all." Mm-hmm. And I quit being a research chemist and started science writing, because that's what I figured I could do. We wrote the first environmental science textbook in North America in 1971. Put out for Earth Day 1. We missed it by a year. It came out a year later, but we thought that if Earth stewardship was going to happen, people had to have the science background to create the solutions to the problems that we needed. So I did that, and then that provided a comfortable living. I started doing adventures. And then I started putting two and two together. I'm a professional writer and now a professional adventurer, so let me write about my adventures.
So it seemed to make sense to meld the two together.
Yeah, and it came together, and it took a little struggle to change the cadence of my writing. I went and took some courses at the Banff Center and those people really helped me to develop my style to be what we call a trade book writer for popular books.
Sure. So you've had adventures around the world. Any adventure that you sort of regret not doing or that you would like to do in the future?
Well, no, you can't regret things. I've had some tragedies. I've been involved in some tragedies where people have died, and that's always not good. I mean, you know, that's an understatement.
Yeah.
But that said, living in the now is really where it's at, and mistakes get made, your life goes on, things happen. I don't like to go back and look at my mistakes. And certainly, look, I'm old now. I'm over the hill. It's done. The big time adventures are over. Did I do everything in life I wanted to? No, that's a question I'm not going to answer. You live every day and you do what's full, and then you're a day older. And yeah.
Well, reading your book, I think you've lived a pretty full life, and you've got a lot out of your adventures. And not only have you met a whole lot of interesting people, but it's great that you've recorded that for us so that, you know, everyone can benefit from it.
Well,
so,
thank you.
Yeah. So good job, Jon. So the book is Tracking Lions, Myths and Wilderness in Samburu, which is in the heart of Africa. Thanks for sharing that adventure with us. Thanks for being our guest on Talking Kootenay Books.
Well, Keith, thanks for allowing me to share that. I appreciate it, and it's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. This is Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell, and I'm your host.